audible? Good evening, guys. Am I audible? Thank you. Okay, so in the last session, we were discussing with those vulnerabilities are identified, how exactly a hacker will be able to launch the attack. Right now, in addition to it, when you speak about a hacker trying to launch attacks, is not just targeted towards the operating system or the application. A hacker can also try to identify some vulnerabilities on your websites or your web applications and all, right? So let us see how these vulnerabilities can be found. So the application what we used earlier, shadow security scanner, is to identify vulnerabilities on the operating system or the installed application, right? So today let us see how hacker can identify vulnerabilities on your websites or your web applications, uh, as we call it. Either you call it as a website or a web application. So we'll see how vulnerabilities on these things can be found. So for this, I'll be using an application called Acunetics. Okay. So this one is also a commercial tool similar to Shadow Security Scanner, but you have a trial version available for Acunetics. So we use it to perform scanning on a website, and then we see if we can find some results, and if there are some results, how exactly we can proceed. So when you are installing this application, it would ask you to create a user ID and a password. So the user ID should be given in the form of a email address. So let me give something. So whatever email address you are defining here in the username, uh, it's not mandatory that this particular email address should be existing, right? So even if that email address does not exist, right, you can still use that. So whatever the user ID you are giving, it should be in the format of a email, right? And then take a password. So once the user ID and password is defined, installation would be same as every other Windows application that you do. See, the Akinetics client would automatically open on your web browser. So give the user ID that you have created when you are installing the application. Authentication is successful and you are able to log in. The next step is for you to add the target, right? So you'll have to see what exactly is the target, what you have to add. So here I'll show you with two different websites which you can use, right? Uh, for scanning. One is testasp.vulnweb.com. So I'm also giving it here in the okay. And the second application is something like this. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, this is the URL. Two URLs. So you will either be able to use any of these two URLs for performing the scan. Okay, so what you do is click on add target. Give the scan. So when you say scan, it will ask you like, do you want to go with a full scan or only like just on the remote mission. So it's always better go with full scan. So click show you what kind of vulnerabilities exist on it. You are not supposed to do it unless you are authorized, right? Kinetics application, once you give the URL and you say start scanning, Guys, can you hear me now? Am I audible? Yeah. So the URLs what I have given, right, are those URLs which you can use for scanning vulnerabilities using this Acunetics application. Okay. So yesterday what we did, you can directly give the IP address, or if there is a very specific website or a web application, you see the URLs what I have given, right? Those URLs can be Acunetics application. So is that clear? Am I audible? Guys, how is the audio now? I'm not sharing the screen. Uh, Tell me if you are able to view the screen. Okay. Yeah. So coming back to the URLs what I have given you can be used in this Acunetics vulnerability scanner. So depending on what exactly you're trying to scan, say you're trying to scan server, you can right away go with its IP address. But here, when it comes to Acunetics, so there is a possibility when you're dealing with the web applications or websites, it doesn't make any sense trying to take the IP address and scanning it, right? Because you may come across multiple websites or web apps. Is that clear? why we are using the URL here in the scan. So guys, are you clear why we are using these URLs? Right? So when you scan, use the IP address to scan it. Is everyone clear with that? If you are trying to scan the operating system, the IP address of the machine is okay. Right. So you don't need to give any URLs and all. Directly give the IP address. That would be sufficient. So is everyone clear with that aspect? Or the websites, you don't go with the IP address. Now, why you are not going with the IP address? For a simple reason, on a single IP, right? There is a option of having multiple web applications. Okay, so you can have multiple web applications hosted on the same IP address. So if you try to scan the IP address, if you find some vulnerability, will it be possible? So guys, if you are trying to scan a IP address, and on that IP address there are multiple websites or say web applications running there, and you find some vulnerability, how can you associate that vulnerability to a specific application or a specific website? Will it be possible? So you'll not be able to associate that vulnerability to a very specific. URLs, right? So you directly say, I want to scan this particular URL. So on the Is it something better now? I don't understand what's the issue because here I'm able to get around 78 Mbps of bandwidth download and upload, but uh, there's something going on here, unable to hear the audio. Okay, so if it's clear, uh, we'll continue. There should not be a network issue because I have 78 Mbps. Uh, I'm not sure. Now, unfortunately, even I'm an end user as how you guys are. So there's something wrong with the WebEx side going on. So we'll not be able to troubleshoot that. That's unfortunately beyond our control. But anyway, we'll try to continue. Yeah, yesterday, yes, it was good. Yesterday, none of you had any issues, but I'm not sure what's going on. So even like constantly, I'm checking with the bandwidth and all. So okay, anyway. So website or an application, you'll not be able to depend on the IP address, right? So instead of depending on IP, you directly use the URL of whatever the website or whatever the web application is to be scanned, and you continue the scan activity, right? Now, generally, when you scan web applications, you will come across some vulnerabilities, something like this, like SQL injections or cross-site scripting, right? Have you guys? So, guys, have you come across such names? Yeah. Okay. So, without screen sharing, the audio is clear. Strange. So, is the screen visible to everyone? Yeah, the screen is visible. Okay. So, when you generally scan web applications, right, you will see vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting vulnerabilities or SQL injection vulnerabilities, right? So we'll see scanner, right? I'm not sure. I think like when we started this, you guys started reporting that the audio is break and stop the scan. But I'll show you like how hackers exploit these vulnerabilities. So whatever the URL that is to be scanned for vulnerability, then you say start scanning it. for uh, vulnerabilities were found. And as the scan would continue, right? Once whether you only have some medium risk or high risk vulnerabilities on the tab. Start scanning using Akinetics vulnerability scanner. Here with how we use Akinetics vulnerability scanner. Am I audible? I'm really sorry. I'm not really. How do we add the URL in Akinetics target? You are clicking on add target. You say scan the server, right? So you say scan the server. Give me 2 or 3 minutes, right? I'll try to reboot my system and try to reach. I have sent a link for you to download these virtual machines. Is the audio clear now? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So just give me a minute. Let me start my VMs. And in the meanwhile, as I said, you can check your email. I have shared this link for the virtual missions and all. So you can download those virtual missions and keep it ready. So in the next session, I'll show you how you can start using these VMs and how you can start setting up your lab. And also make note of that WhatsApp group link. So you can use the group link to join the WhatsApp group. Harish, if you have not filled the details, you can do it today, right? So maybe at least by tomorrow afternoon, I should be getting the details so I can share the VMs with you. Guys, you're all able to view my screen. Yeah. Uh, uh, Guys, in case if you don't see the mail in your inbox, maybe you can once try to check it in the spam as well. Okay, so as we were discussing about website or web applications, right? Websites or web applications, right? We are not using the IP, but we are directly using the URL to initiate a scan, right? So here, uh, in your web application based vulnerabilities and exploits, right? There is a application called the Juice Shop. So that's what I was showing you earlier. That is what I have given the link for you to scan earlier, right? So now let me start this application here. So this particular application, Juice Shop, it has many vulnerabilities, right? So we will see how exactly hackers can try to uh, exploit these vulnerabilities. Okay, it's 137.203. Okay, so let us access the application. So this application is running on port number 42,000. So because I'm running this application within my local network, right? So I can directly use the IP address and the port number. So here, as you see, uh, okay, you got connected to this application, right? So generally on web applications, right, the kind of vulnerabilities that a hacker can exploit, right, is varying, right? So a hacker can try to uh, inject code, right, onto the application. So any web application where user data is being taken, right? So any web application where there is a option of user data input, right? A hacker will be able to inject the code and see what actually happens, right? So here, let us first see how HTML code injection works, right? So in HTML code injection, right, here you see in the OWASP Juice Shop application, you see a small search option. So click on the search option here, and here directly you can start writing the HTML code, right? So generally, wherever you see a search box, what you type whenever you are seeing a search box on a web page, right? And especially on a web page, something like this, where you can purchase some drinks and all this. So you will generally be searching for the products, whatever they have been advertised. Is that correct? So here, uh, not only for the products that have been advertised, right? A hacker can also inject some code into this particular web page. Now, let me show you how this is done. So I can just start typing some HTML code. Now, let's say, uh, so I'm just typing in some HTML code, and when I enter, so when I hit the enter key on my keyboard, now you can see. So whatever the code I have executed, means whatever the code I have typed there on the search box, that has been executed as it is, and it is showing me in the results. So whatever the code I have typed, so this is the one I have typed. It's a simple HTML code, right? So this particular code just shows you a message, hello everyone, right? And that's what you are able to see here in the search result of this page, right? So this you call as HTML code injection, right? So you call this as HTML code injection. Now, why is this HTML code injection happening? What could be the reason? So, guys, uh, what do you think is the reason? Why is this HTML code injection successful? Any guess? So here there is a vulnerability on that web page, right? On the target web page, there is a vulnerability, right? Uh, the web page is not trying to properly understand the user input. So it is not validating the user input, right? So it is not trying to see whatever we type there on the search box is a simple text, or are we trying to type some kind of code, right? So if we are trying to type some kind of code, this particular web page should reject it, right? And because it is not rejecting it, whatever code you type is being executed here, right? So for this particular issue where the user data is not properly being validated, right, where user input is not properly validated, something in the lines of the HTML code injection, you also see something else called cross-site scripting. So there is another vulnerability called cross-site scripting, where a hacker can just post some code, right? And that particular code will not affect the target website. So whatever the code that is posted by the hacker here will not be affecting the target website, but that would be executed on every user's computer, whoever is visiting that website. So yesterday, if you recollect, we found some vulnerability. We are trying to launch an attack and we are trying to change some content on the web page. But today, now what we are going to do is, it's not going to affect the web page, or it's not going to affect the web server, but it would be executed directly on every user computer, whoever is visiting that web page. So can we consider that as a dangerous threat? So let us see uh, what can we do here in this cross-site script. So here, as you see, this is the code that I'm going to inject into the search box. So as of now, if I go to the search box here, now let's say I'll just go back to the home page. It's taking long. Yeah. Okay, so I go back to the home page, right? Now in the search box, I'll just post this particular code, right? And enter. Now see, in the search result, I'm not getting anything, but you see there's a new pop-up here on my web browser which says XSS done, and there's a message what we have used in the attack script, right? So if this is done on a live server, right, that would be reflecting to every user computer, whoever is visiting that web page. So let us try if we can access this online page. I think my DNS is not configured. Strange. Good. Guys, you are able to view my web browser? Yeah. So here, this is the same web application, right? The one which is hosted somewhere on internet. Now, let me try to execute the exact same uh, script. So the same script that we were executing here on the VM, right? And then we'll see what would be the result. You can also try to access this particular page. Now you see there's a pop-up here which says the cross-site script attack was done, right? Can you also try to access the page? Can you guys also try to access that website? And there is a code which I have given in the search box, right? So you can also test it. Okay, you have noted that. Okay, so this application on the juice shop application, you have many vulnerabilities, right? So you can try to perform a vulnerability scan, try to identify the vulnerabilities and keep exploiting. And this is also available in the Kali Linux virtual machine, which which I have already shared with you, right? So you can either use it from the Kali Linux VM, or you can also directly go to this URL where the juice shop application is hosted, and you can try this. Okay, so let us see the other vulnerability. So there's another vulnerability which hackers are using to bypass the authentication, right? So here, if I check it in the application, there is a login page. So let the web page refresh. Okay, so here, as you see, when you click on this button account, right, you see an option for login, right? So here you can try to give a user ID and password and log in to this particular website, right? That is, if you already have a user account created. But when you speak about a hacker, right, a hacker may not have created a user ID or a password. And generally, what hackers do, they try to bypass the authentication, right? So there's a vulnerability on this web application on the login page also, right? Where a hacker can try to bypass the authentication and log into the account even without knowing what is the correct password of a user account. Now, let's say uh, I want to log in with a user account admin, right? I want to log into this particular page with a user account as admin. So, without knowing the password of this user account admin, will it be possible for me to log in? So without knowing the password, we will not be able to log in, right? Now let's see uh, how a hacker can try to bypass it by taking advantage of a vulnerability, right? And here, if you observe, I'm not giving the username as admin, but I'm giving it in this particular form, right? So I say, check if there is a user ID called admin, right? And at this point, I'm not really sure if there is a user account called admin or not. So I'm not even sure whether that account is existing on the server. So what I'm doing as an alternate, I say, if this user account admin does not exist, try to see if this particular condition is correct or not. So now assume there is no user account called admin on that particular server, right? There is no user account admin on the server. Even if the user account is not available, this condition, whatever you see here, whatever I have highlighted, will this condition always be true? So this particular condition, what we have given, is always true. So a hacker is trying to give a condition, right, in the login prompt a condition which will always be true, right? So now, as I already said, hacker doesn't know what is the password of the user account. So I'll just keep typing some random keystrokes and then I say login. Now here, as you can see, once I try to log in, right? Now see, I'm able to log in with the username admin, right? So whatever password I've given is not correct, right? I don't even know what is the password, but I'm able to log in just because this particular condition, right? This condition is always true. Okay. So is this clear? So if your web page or your web application is not properly validating the user data, so whatever the end user is typing, right? If that data is not properly validated, these are all the kind of attacks a hacker can perform, right? So attacks can be either for bypassing the password authentication, right? Or attacks that would just dump or inject the code, whatever the hacker wants you to see, or whatever the hacker wants the end users to see, right? So whenever some web page or web applications are being created, if you don't want this kind of attacks, right? If you don't want this kind of attacks to be happening, what should we do? So if you do not want this kind of authentication, so this kind of attacks to be successful, no Vijay, multi-factor authentication doesn't come into picture here. So what's happening here is whatever the data that end user is typing, maybe it is in the search box or maybe in the login page, right? Whatever the data that the end user types is not being verified properly, right? Now just see, should your website permit end user to type some kind of a code like this in the search box? So on a search box, you're not expected to type some code, right? But in this case, because of this application's vulnerability, even when we are trying to type the code, that application is accepting it. So it should have denied end user's request whenever there is a code and all, right? The same thing happened. Now, do we really type something like this on a login page? Is this a kind of expected input on a login page? So, guys, what do you say? So we don't really give inputs like this, right? But say hackers would always try to trick your application or your logic, whatever is going on in the background for the authentication, try to bypass the authentications here, right? Now, when hackers are trying to execute some kind of codes or some kind of scripts and all in the user input forms, your web page should be designed in such a way that it should not accept it, right? The web page should be designed in such a way it should not accept and process the code. There should be a error given, right? But if the web page is not really looking into the code, right? Web page is not checking what exactly the end user is typing and it is blindly accepting everything, then these are the kind of attacks that hackers will be able to successfully do. So is it clear, everyone? So if there are some vulnerabilities, how exactly these hackers can try to perform attacks? So whether there is a vulnerability on your operating system or on the installed applications, or there is a vulnerability on your website or on your web application, right? If there is some vulnerability, hackers would always try with different kind of attack techniques to launch the attack and compromise your server or compromise your application. Mr. Bright, that's what I was saying. If you do not want a hacker to be successful with this kind of attacks, your web page should be verifying what kind of a data is being input. So your web page, so it's not you as a system admin or as a security admin who is going to do it. Your web developer have to take care, right? So web developer have to ensure that the page or the website is designed in such a way that if someone is trying to input some codings, right, codes or scripts and all, it should not accept it. Is it clear? Yeah. So that would be the job of your website creator or your web developer. So based on vulnerabilities, this is how a hacker can try to launch different kind of attacks. So if you recollect, this is what we were discussing, right? Hackers try to launch attacks, right, based on vulnerabilities. So if vulnerabilities are not available, right, then maybe hacker can try to steal your password and then try to launch an attack and compromise your system, right? So hackers can try to compromise your system based on the second method, that is stealing your passwords and all. So how these passwords can be stolen and all, right? So that we'll discuss in the next session. And in the meanwhile, everyone please check if you have received that uh, link for the virtual missions and all. In case if you have not received it, once try to check it in the spam folder also. Sometimes there's a chance it might land in the spam. And in case someone missed to fill your details, I'm giving you the link. Just make a note of it and fill in your details so that I'll be able to share it. Yeah, for those who have already filled your details till yesterday or today, right? I've already shared the links, right? So in case if someone has not yet filled the details, you can please fill the details there. So for the lab manual and the presentation, I've given you the link. You can copy them. So have you all taken the link? Yeah. Okay, thank you all, and try to download the VMs and keep them ready. So in the next session, I'll show you how do you start using your VMs and how do you set up your lab environment. Thank you all.